A cruel farmer ruthlessly traps puppies in the rain. Nature, however, responds with a stunning intervention that will change their destiny forever. A story about karma, redemption, and the power of animal compassion that will deeply touch your heart. An unforgettable lesson about how the universe mysteriously balances its books. Prepare to be moved. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment where you're watching from. The sky darkens suddenly over the vast farmlands. Nature, imposing and mysterious, prepares for a spectacle of force. The farm animals sense what is coming. Chickens retreat earlier than usual. The cattle instinctively huddle together. In the main house, the only sound is the creaking of a rocking chair on the porch, where a man with a severe expression watches the approaching black clouds. Anyone looking at the scene would see just an ordinary farmer. But those who know Arthur Stone know that behind those dark eyes lies a story filled with pain and abandonment. A man forged by the hardness of a life that offered no easy choices. His mother left when he was only 5. His father, unable to cope with his wife's absence, found solace in alcohol, teaching his son that feelings are weaknesses one cannot afford. The first thunderclap rips through the sky. Arthur's calloused fingers tighten on the arms of the chair. The storm is coming, and with it an unexpected encounter that will forever change the course of his existence. On the vastness of that 5,000-acre property, where human power seems minuscule against the grandeur of nature, Arthur built his empire. An empire of solitude, rigidity, and obsessive control. The deep lines on his face are not just the result of the relentless sun of the plains. They are scars from internal battles, sleepless nights, difficult decisions made with the coldness he learned to cultivate as a virtue. The rain begins to fall, first in scattered drops that soon turn into dense curtains of water. The smell of wet earth invades everything. It is the scent of renewal, of life continuing its cycle, indifferent to small human tragedies. But Arthur does not contemplate the beauty of this moment. For him, the rain just means another day unable to work the land, another variable beyond his control. Lightning illuminates the entire sky, revealing for an instant the old barn at the far end of the property. The thunder that follows is deafening. Arthur decides to check if the structures are secure. He stands up with decisive movements, puts on his waterproof coat, and walks through the mud already forming, facing the fury of the elements. What he doesn't know is that, at that exact moment, life is manifesting surprisingly in the old barn. A stray mutt, thin and exhausted, has just given birth to 5 small puppies, 5 new lives shivering from the cold, seeking the warmth of their mother's body as their only shelter against the brutal storm raging outside. The barn door bursts open violently, pushed by the wind and Arthur's firm hand. The beam of his flashlight cuts through the darkness and finds the frightened eyes of the mother dog, who instinctively covers her puppies with her body in a desperate attempt to protect them. Could one see, at that precise moment, something change in the farmer's hard gaze? Could one perceive a hesitation, a distant memory of his own vulnerable childhood? Perhaps. But that spark of empathy is quickly suffocated by the ingrained habit of seeing the world as a constant threat. Strays only bring trouble, he mutters to himself as sweat mixes with raindrops on his face hardened by the years. With quick, determined movements, Arthur grabs a metal cage used for transporting small animals. He ignores the mother's whimpers as he pulls the puppies away from her. 5 tiny lives, eyes still closed, unable to comprehend the cruelty of the world they have just entered. He places them in the cold cage, carries it out of the barn, and leaves it exposed to the torrential rain. The mother dog barks desperately, trying to reach her pups. Her brown eyes, deep as wells of anguish, follow Arthur as he walks away, his heavy boots leaving deep marks in the mud. And anyone hearing those barks from a distance would realize they weren't just sounds of despair. There was something more, something like a promise that this story wouldn't end there, on that stormy night. The farmer returns home, wet and irritated. He removes his muddy boots on the porch and goes inside. The silence of the empty house seems to amplify. The sound of the rain on the roof. He pours himself a generous shot of whiskey, trying to drown the uncomfortable feeling that haunts him. It's not remorse, he tells himself. It's just exhaustion. Tomorrow the puppies will be gone, he thinks. Nature is cruel and efficient in its selection process. What Arthur doesn't know is that, while he sips his alcohol, forces far beyond his comprehension are beginning to move in the darkness of the stormy night. A particularly intense lightning bolt cuts the sky like a sharp knife, followed by thunder that seems to make the earth tremble. The flash of light is so powerful that Arthur can see from his living room window the main corral in the distance, and in the next instant, a second bolt strikes precisely that structure. The smell of burning wood soon reaches his nostrils, mixing with the scent of rain. The farmer runs outside, forgetting even his coat. There it is, the fire, defying the water falling from the skies, voraciously consuming the part of the corral where all the feed for the dry season was stored. Arthur fights the flames for hours, but the damage is already done. When he finally manages to control the fire, more than half of the provisions are lost. Exhausted, soaked, and defeated, he looks up at the sky, as if questioning a higher power. Why right there? Why right now, when all forecasts predict the worst drought in the last 30 years? Meanwhile, something extraordinary happens in the distant barn. The mother dog, driven by a fierce maternal instinct, manages to open the poorly latched door and reach the cage where her puppies cry, soaked by the relentless rain. With a determination only mothers know, she uses her teeth and paws to dislodge the cage latch, freeing her little ones. One by one, she carries them by the scruff of the neck, crossing the storm towards the woods surrounding the property. She finds shelter under the exposed roots of an ancient tree, where the ground remains dry. There she offers the warmth of her body, saves her puppies from certain death, and with her eyes fixed towards the farm, seems to make a silent promise. The day dawns clear, as if the violent storm of the previous night had been just a dream. Arthur gets up before sunrise, as he always has. Routine gives him the false sense of control over a life that, deep down, he knows is as fragile as that of any living being. After checking the damage to the corral, he heads to the barn, ready to remove the puppies' bodies. To his surprise, the cage is empty, the door open. The mother dog has also disappeared. For a brief moment, something akin to relief passes through his heart, but he quickly dismisses the feeling. Eaten by some predator, he concludes, considering the matter closed. There are bigger problems to solve. The following weeks bring the first signs of the devastating drought that is approaching. The sky, once generous with its waters, is now a merciless blue, without a single cloud. The sun punishes the earth. With increasing ferocity, the pastures, once green and lush, begin to yellow. The cattle, always robust, show the first signs of weight loss. Arthur tries not to show concern, but his face grows darker each day. Without the stored feed lost in the fire, his options are limited. The neighbors, whom he always treated with a mixture of indifference and superiority, now represent his only hope. But how can he ask for help when he spent his life building an image of self-sufficiency? How can he show weakness when his reputation is based on strength? And it is in this moment of vulnerability that something unusual begins to happen. First, it's just reports from the farmhands. Sightings of puppies on the edges of the property. Not one or two, but 5. Always the same ones, always in specific locations. One is often seen near the few remaining puddles resisting the drought. Another seems to have a special talent for finding edible roots that the cattle devour eagerly. A third keeps predators away, who, hungry due to the drought, begin to approach the weaker calves. The fourth always appears before the rare, brief showers, as if announcing them. And the fifth has a habit of following the workers, alerting them to broken fences or animals in danger. Coincidence, Arthur thinks. Nothing more than that. But the residents of the nearby town have another explanation. In the small St. Francis Church, patron saint of animals, the elderly ladies, keepers of local traditions and beliefs, begin to comment on the guardian dogs. According to their stories passed down through generations, animals can become messengers of nature spirits when nature is disrespected. Martha, the oldest among them, with her 92 years of wisdom, is emphatic. They are the guardians of the land. They appear when the balance is broken. The rumors spread quickly. Within days, Arthur notices different looks when he goes into town. Some avoid him. Others watch him with an almost morbid curiosity. Business transactions, once easy, become complicated. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. He is the man who defied the guardian dogs. The turning point occurs exactly 3 months after the initial incident. One morning like any other, Arthur wakes up to the sound he most longed to hear: rain. His heart fills with hope. He runs to the porch ready to smell the wet earth. But the scene he sees leaves him stunned. The heavy clouds are pouring abundant water, but only on the neighboring properties. It's as if an invisible line marks the beginning of his land, beyond which the clouds refuse to shed their precious cargo. A bizarre meteorological phenomenon, scientists would say. Divine punishment, the religious would whisper. Magic of the guardian dogs, the town's old ladies would claim. Whatever the explanation, the result is devastating for the farm. While the surrounding properties revitalize with the moderate rain, Arthur's lands remain dry and increasingly barren. The contrast is so stark that it attracts the attention of an agronomist from the regional co-op. Dr. Eleanor Hayes, 35, with brown hair always tied in a practical bun and sharp green eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, is known for her scientific and pragmatic approach. Her initial interest is purely professional, documenting a rare case of anomalous microclimate for her research. But what she finds on Arthur's farm is far more intriguing than she could have imagined. During her first visits, Eleanor observes weather patterns, collects soil samples, installs small measuring devices, always methodical, always rational. Arthur tolerates her only because he needs solutions, not superstitions. "Mr. Stone, I've seen many unusual weather phenomena, but nothing like this," she comments after a week of observations. "It's as if there's an invisible barrier around your property. And what's your scientific explanation for that, doctor?" he asks with poorly disguised irony. "I don't have one yet," Eleanor admits, adjusting her glasses. "But science doesn't fear mysteries. It just turns them into questions to be answered." It's during her 3rd week on the farm that Eleanor finally sees them. The 5 puppies, now grown, watching her from the edge of the woods. They don't run when she approaches. On the contrary, it seems they were waiting for her. From that moment on, the dogs begin to accompany her on her daily measurements. At first, Eleanor tries to maintain her scientific objectivity, but soon gives in to affection for the animals. She starts feeding them, giving them names. Thunder, the largest and most protective. Rain, the blue-eyed female who always precedes precipitation on neighboring lands. Tara, the one who sniffs out nutritious roots. Dash, the most agile, always warning of dangers. And Sunny, the smallest with golden fur, who seems to radiate warmth even on the coldest nights. When Arthur discovers that Eleanor is feeding the dogs, his temper explodes like a dam bursting. He finds her near the property line, the 5 animals around her calmly eating the food she brought. "What do you think you're doing?" he bellows, striding towards her. Eleanor stands up, showing no fear. "I'm feeding hungry animals, Mr. Stone. Any problem with that?" "On my property, I decide which animals stay or go," he replies, his voice trembling with anger. "Curious," she says, with a calmness that only intensifies the farmer's fury. "If these are just ordinary dogs, why are you so bothered by them?" The question hits Arthur like a slap in the face. Why indeed do these animals disturb him so much? Why can't he look at them without feeling something stirring inside his chest? Something he buried long ago. As the verbal clash continues, clouds begin to form in the sky, dense and threatening. Eleanor notices the change in the weather. "Looks like it's finally going to rain on your land, Mr. Stone. Get off my property," he orders, ignoring her observation about the weather. "And don't come back." Eleanor calmly gathers her equipment. Before leaving, she looks the farmer in the eyes. "Do you know what's most fascinating about nature, Mr. Stone? Its infinite capacity to forgive, but that forgiveness always comes with a lesson. The agronomist's words echo in Arthur's mind long after her departure. That night, alone in his house too large for one man, he is tormented by unsettling dreams. He sees himself as a child again, crying for the mother who never returned. He sees his drunken father teaching him that tears are a sign of weakness. He sees the puppies shivering in the rain inside the metal cage. The next morning, seized by a fierce determination, Arthur decides to put an end to this situation once and for all. If the dogs are the cause of his problems, then they need to be removed permanently. It doesn't matter if they are guardian dogs or not. Armed with a shotgun and with the reluctant help of 2 employees, he begins a search across the property. The workers, superstitious, try to dissuade him, but years of unquestioned authority stifle any open protest. The search lasts for hours. The relentless sun beats down on the men. Arthur dismisses the employees when he notices their lack of enthusiasm for the task, deciding to continue alone. His stubbornness takes him further and further into the most remote and rugged areas of the farm. It's late afternoon, when shadows lengthen and distort perception, that he finally spots one of the dogs. It's Dash, the most agile one, who seems to be deliberately showing himself to be followed. Arthur advances, determined, ignoring his own body's signs of fatigue. The dog leads him to a rocky area, rarely visited even by the oldest employees. The terrain is treacherous with loose stones and steep ravines. In his eagerness to reach the animal, Arthur doesn't notice the danger. A misstep, a stone giving way under his weight, and he finds himself falling down a ravine. The fall isn't long, but enough for his leg to get trapped between 2 heavy rocks. The pain is immediate and intense. He tries to move, but each effort only intensifies the suffering. The shotgun fell too far from his reach. His cell phone, destroyed in the impact. Arthur Stone, the man who always prided himself on his absolute control over everything around him, is now completely at the mercy of the nature he so despised. The sun begins to set, and with it comes the terrifying realization: no one knows where he is. No one will come looking for him, at least not before the next day. An entire night exposed to the elements, a night that promises to be cold, as they often are in the region during the drought. Ironically, the same situation he imposed on the puppies 3 months earlier. Darkness falls quickly. The nocturnal sounds of the woods, previously just part of the soundscape of his rural life, now take on threatening qualities. Every rustle of leaves could be a predator. Every distant howl, a promise of danger. And then, when despair truly begins to set in, he sees them. The 5 dogs emerge from the darkness, their eyes reflecting the faint light of the new moon. Arthur swallows hard. Is this how it ends? Attacked by the same animals he tried to destroy? But the attack never comes. Thunder, the largest of them, approaches cautiously and lies down beside the farmer, his warm body against Arthur's skin, which is already starting to cool. The other 4 follow suit, positioning themselves around Arthur, creating a living barrier against the night's chill. Confused, unable to comprehend the animal's behavior, the farmer remains tense initially. But as the hours pass and the cold deepens, gratitude for the offered warmth overcomes any suspicion. In the deepest darkness of the night, when the stars seem brightest and closest, something extraordinary happens. The mother dog, whom Arthur hadn't seen since the night of the storm, appears carrying a small hunted animal. She leaves it within the man's reach and retreats, watching from a safe distance. Hunger, now as intense as the pain in his leg, makes Arthur overcome his initial revulsion. He eats the raw meat, silently thanking for the unexpected gift. It is at that moment, with the wild taste in his mouth and the warmth of the animals he should hate keeping him alive, that Arthur Stone finally allows the walls around his heart to begin crumbling. Tears repressed for so long flow freely down his hardened face. They are not just tears of physical pain, but of a much older, deeper ache. "Why?" he whispers to the dogs. "Why are you helping me after what I did?" The answer, of course, doesn't come in words. But in the eyes of those animals, Arthur sees something he wasn't prepared to find: understanding. Not judgment, not revenge, just the pure and simple acceptance that he, like them, is just another vulnerable creature in the vastness of the world. Night progresses slowly, each minute a lesson in humility for the man who spends hours alternating between consciousness and a feverish state of semi-delirium. In his lucid moments, he talks to the dogs, telling them stories of his childhood, confessing fears he never admitted even to himself. It is the first time in decades that Arthur allows himself to be truly vulnerable. When the first light of morning finally touches the horizon, a familiar figure appears at the top of the ravine. Eleanor, the agronomist he expelled from his property, is there, the first rays of sun creating a sort of aura around her loose hair. How did you find me?" Arthur asks, his voice hoarse after the long night. Eleanor smiles, looking at the dogs still surrounding the farmer. "Let's just say I had help from some very special guides. With the help of the agronomist and the dogs themselves, who seem to understand exactly what needs to be done, Arthur is finally freed from the rocks. His leg is severely injured, requiring immediate medical attention. During the difficult journey back to the farmhouse, leaning on Eleanor and limping painfully, the farmer observes something that leaves him speechless. Clouds begin to form over his land, dense and heavy. Clouds that, for weeks, seemed to deliberately avoid his property. "Looks like the rain finally decided to pay you a visit, Mr. Stone," Eleanor comments, with a slight smile. The first drops begin to fall as they reach the main house. It's a gentle, warm rain, almost like a caress from nature. The 5 puppies, now young dogs, run and play in the rain, their dark silhouettes contrasting against the silvery sheen of the falling drops. In the following weeks, as Arthur recovers from his injuries, something extraordinary happens. The rain, which previously avoided his property, now falls regularly and perfectly. Not too much to avoid erosion, nor too little. Exactly what is needed to revitalize the parched land. The pastures flourish like never before, greener and more abundant than anyone in the region had ever seen. The neighbors, previously reluctant to help, now appear, driven by curiosity. How is it possible that Stone's land, once on the brink of ruin, is now the most prosperous in the region? What did he do to deserve such a blessing? Arthur, still recovering, welcomes everyone with a hospitality that surprises his oldest acquaintances. There is no longer the arrogance, the calculated coldness of before. There is a transformed man who offers coffee on the porch and talks about the weather as if it were a new and fascinating subject. Eleanor continues to visit the farm regularly, now no longer as an investigator of an anomalous climate phenomenon, but as a friend and advisor. It was she who suggested that Arthur participate for the first time in the traditional Harvest Thanksgiving festival in the nearby town. Reluctant at first, he finally agrees. In the 5th month after the original incident, still limping slightly, Arthur Stone surprises everyone by attending the community celebration he had always ignored in the past. The elderly ladies of the town, the same ones who spread the stories about the guardian dogs, watch with interest as he approaches. The ID 5 dogs always by his side like faithful guardians. Martha, the oldest among them, takes the initiative to approach the farmer. "Your companions are very beautiful," she comments, stroking the head of Sunny, the smallest of the dogs. "They are not my companions, Martha," Arthur replies, with a gentle smile that seemed foreign on his previously severe face. "I am their companion." The old woman smiles, revealing nearly toothless gums. "You know, son, the old folks used to say that nature always finds a way to teach those who have forgotten how to live in harmony with it." "And what happens after the lesson is learned?" Arthur asks, genuinely curious. Then comes the most beautiful part," the elder replies, her eyes shining with wisdom. "Nature celebrates and invites the student to become a teacher." Martha's words stay with Arthur long after the festival. Back on the farm, spending long hours on the porch observing his now lush land, an idea begins to take shape in his mind. Finally, in the 6th month after that fateful stormy night, Arthur Stone makes a decision that leaves the entire community stunned. He transforms a significant portion of his land into a sanctuary for abandoned and endangered animals. The project, initially modest, soon grows larger with the help of Eleanor, who accepts the invitation to manage the sanctuary. Her technical knowledge perfectly complements Arthur's new vision, who now dedicates his resources and influence to a cause he never imagined embracing. The first official residents of the sanctuary are, of course, the 5 dogs and their mother. But soon others arrive. Mistreated horses, cattle rescued from illegal slaughterhouses, wild birds recovered from trafficking, small mammals orphaned by poaching. On the day of the official inauguration, when local and regional authorities gather to learn about the project, something magical happens. A light, warm rain begins to fall exactly at the moment the 5 dogs, now adult and healthy, run through the open field, celebrating the historic moment in their own way. The oldest residents of the town exchange significant glances, murmuring among themselves, "Nature always finds a way to balance things." Arthur Stone, once known only as the Cruel Farmer, now has a respected name throughout the region, not for the fear he inspires, but for the example of transformation he represents. His story spreads, crossing borders, inspiring others to rethink their relationship with the natural world. In his talks to young farmers, Arthur always ends with the same phrase, "My greatest lesson was realizing that true control over life doesn't come from ruthless domination, but from respectful harmony with everything around us." And anyone passing by that farm in the late afternoon, when the sun paints the sky with orange hues before departing, will see a man sitting on the porch, 5 dogs around him, all contemplating the horizon. No longer as owner and property, but as companions on a journey. Creatures who, each in their own way, learned the true meaning of forgiveness and transformation. Because in the end, what are we but part of something much larger? What are our small cruelties but opportunities for compassion to find us? And what is redemption but the chance to start over, to rewrite our story with the indelible ink of love? Nature, in its ancient wisdom, always knew this, and it continues to teach us, day after day, that even the darkest night eventually gives way to dawn, that even the hardest heart can, like the earth after the rain, bloom in colors it never knew it possessed. Arthur Stone learned this lesson the hard way, and we who witness his journey are invited to reflect. What lessons do we still need to learn? What guardian dogs are trying to show us the way back home? The answer perhaps is closer than we imagine. In the bark of an abandoned dog, in the eyes of a mistreated animal, in the silent resistance of nature that, even wounded, continues to offer us its gifts. Because ultimately, it is not we who save the animals. It is they who, with their infinite capacity to forgive, save us from ourselves. They remind us of our essential humanity, so easily forgotten in the whirlwind of modern life. And when we understand this, truly, deeply, something changes within us. Something so fundamental that all our other perceptions are transformed. 1. Evening, months after all these events, Eleanor finds Arthur sitting on the porch as usual, the 5 dogs around him. But there is something different in his expression. "What are you thinking about?" she asks, sitting in the chair beside him. "I'm thinking about how small we are," he replies, looking up at the starry sky, "and how comforting that is." Eleanor smiles, understanding completely, because she too has been transformed by this journey. She too has learned that science can measure, catalog, and explain, but some truths can only be felt, lived. The 6 months that transformed Arthur Stone also transformed everyone around him. Like ripples in a pond, his story continues to spread, touching lives, inspiring change. And perhaps that is the true magic of the guardian dogs, not their ability to control the weather or predict disasters, but their ability to reveal the best in us, even when we ourselves have lost hope of finding it. Because in the end, the real miracle is not in the inexplicable phenomena, but in the human capacity to change, to grow, to become more than we ever imagined possible. Arthur Stone, sitting on his porch, surrounded by the animals he once tried to destroy, is living proof of this miracle. His body still bears the scars of the accident, but it is the invisible scars, those of the heart, that matter most. Because those are the ones that have finally begun to heal. And as the night deepens and the stars shine ever brighter in the prairie sky, A comforting thought permeates the air. Nature always finds a way to teach, to forgive, to begin again. And we, fragile creatures that we are, can only marvel at its infinite wisdom, and, if we are lucky, learn to dance to the rhythm of its seasons, to the pulse of its ancient heart that beats incessantly in every living being that inhabits this planet. Because in the end, we are all puppies abandoned in the rain, seeking shelter, seeking meaning, seeking connection. And maybe, just maybe, our true guardians have 4 paws, soft fur, and eyes that see beyond our masks of hardness. Maybe it is they, in their profound simplicity, who show us the way back to our own lost humanity. And that, more than anything else, is the true miracle. The everyday miracle of love that transforms, that heals, that redeems. The miracle that Arthur Stone had the privilege to experience, and that, perhaps, we all might one day know, if only we open our hearts to the lesson the guardian dogs came to teach us.